guys, welcome back to the Shackles of Debt. On this channel, we talk about money, debt, and financial literacy. If you like this video and if you find it helpful, please give it a thumbs up and share with your friends. Today's episode is a special podcast episode. About 2 weeks ago, I had the pleasure of speaking to the lovely Natasha Hill, and Natasha has an amazing story to tell. And I'm sure that a lot of you guys out there watching will be able to relate to what she went through. Now, Natasha has had 2 debt-free journeys. The first time round, she paid off £30,000 worth of debt, but just over a year later, she found herself in debt again. At the moment, she is almost finished paying back £17,000 worth of debt. And she has done all of this as a single mum to 2 children. And if that's not enough, she also became a homeowner in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of a debt-free journey as a single parent, and while supporting her daughter throughout university. So yeah, Natasha is pretty inspirational. She now has an Instagram where she talks about her debt-free journey as well as other aspects of financial literacy. And in our conversation, we spoke about how witnessing a family member's house being repossessed led to Natasha living in fear of the same thing happening to her, and also what it was like for her to buy her own flat during a pandemic whilst paying back debt with 2 children. And we also speak about a lot of the financial challenges that single parents can face. And if any of the discussions that we have resonate with you, then you can leave us a comment. You can also send either me or Natasha a message. Like, we would love to hear from you. And links to Natasha's social medias will be down in the description box below. I really hope you enjoy this episode. I just want to know a little bit more about you. So can you tell me a bit about you, your background, where you grew up, etc.?
Absolutely, yes. So I was born in the UK in Nottingham, but at quite a young age of 6, Mum decided to move to the Netherlands, to Amsterdam, a great city. So I literally, we arrived there and I went straight to primary school and, learned Dutch very quickly, actually. I think children do learn languages faster than adults. So, so I lived there for 16 years. So I went to primary school, secondary school, a bit of college. And in, 2001, just as the millennium kind of came about, I came back to the UK.
Oh, wow.
And and ever since I've been here. I wasn't actually planning to stay. But yeah, you never know, you meet, end up having kids, and, you're still here, So, but I mean, ethnicity-wise, my dad is from Jamaica, and my mum was born here as well, mixed race. So that's me. So I speak fluent Dutch, and my mum and sister, they still live in the Netherlands. So yeah.
Oh wow, no, that's good. So you go back and forth often between England and Netherlands?
Now, because of COVID, of course, but in normal times, it's usually been during the school holidays that we just hop in there, because it's the flight's only 45 minutes, from London. So it's easy to get to. It's been a bit less, obviously, over the pandemic, but definitely they come there as well, and I go there.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And in terms of money, our childhoods often have a big impact on how we deal with money later on in adulthood. So thinking specifically about your childhood, is there anything or any experiences that you went through in your childhood that later on influenced what your relationship with money ended up being?
Yes, I mean, it's not actually until maybe in the last couple of years that I've myself thought about this. But I think if you grow up in a family where money's not discussed, and you've also not really got kind of the role models of financial literacy, or, proper property ownership, or, anything to do with investing or anything like that, I think you only know what you know, right? So me, growing up, I didn't see as if anything was missing, because for me, it was the norm. I just knew that, I saw my parents and, my family just work very, very hard, multiple jobs even at times. Yeah. And it just seemed like there was never enough money. It doesn't, even if there were 3 jobs being done, it always seems like it was a struggle, So I think over the kind of from my childhood for a very long time, I've seen it always as money scarce. Money is hard to come by. Money doesn't grow on trees. And
Yeah.
and I mean, in my kind of teens, I did witness, one family member losing a property. And that was the only family member that actually owned property. So I think that for a long time, really put me off in getting involved in anything like that, if you know what I mean. So I definitely think it's got to do with, if you've not kind of been brought up in an environment like that, and if your family also have friends or, family friends that are also not speaking about money, then you didn't know. And, I can remember speaking to my mum at one point when I was a little bit older, and I asked her, so what do you earn, Mum? And the look that she gave me, I just knew, do not ask that again, So,
that's very interesting. Sorry to cut you off. I was like, it's very interesting how people don't talk about money, yet it's the thing that makes everything go around, essentially. And I just wanted to touch on, witnessing a family member losing their property. That's a very obviously for them it's very traumatic, but I can imagine you as a young person, how that could have put you off getting onto the property ladder. So like, what was it about witnessing them losing their house that sort of put you off?
It was literally seeing a for sale sign being hammered, like literally, nails and hammer, kind of old school, being put up. And I just thought, whoa, that's scary, especially because I was a bit younger at the time as well. So my understanding was like, oh, I wouldn't want to risk anything like that. And I also saw how they were affected by it. Kind of, they took the leap, kind of maybe one of the first ones in the family, they took the leap and, it didn't work out. And I just think that was really hard to see. And, ever since, I've never kind of been interested in buying property, because I just always had that kind of vision, of, that for sale sign being, hammered, kind of, nails and hammer. Just, I don't even know how to explain it, but, you just see someone putting it up and it's, they're on a ladder and they just put it up like for sale. And also just because it was on a road with, it wasn't semi-detached or anything. It was, how do you call those houses again? Sorry, I'm a bit...
terrace?
Yeah, terrace houses, yeah. So remember, as well as teens, we care more about what people think. So at one point I was also thinking, oh, I wonder what the neighbours think, because they obviously saw it happening too, So yeah, I definitely think that has, for a very long time, put me off of ever thinking even about buying property. It didn't even cross my mind.
Which is actually interesting because you bought your first property back in June last year. So what happened there?
Yeah, I know. That's
how did you finally reach that point where you felt like, I mean, obviously going from, the fear of ever going through that again and it putting you off ever wanting to be a homeowner to actually becoming a homeowner last year. So tell me what happened.
Yeah, no, it's really strange. So when the pandemic came about, I've always worked in corporate world, office 9 to 5 before COVID. So obviously when COVID struck and I was working from home, there seemed to be a bit more peace and calm in my life. And for some reason, I started thinking, and I just started watching a lot of YouTube videos. And, I've always kind of had in the back of my mind, I've been in this property quite some time, local authority, council flats, and it was taken over by a housing association, but you still have preserved right to buy, even if it's moved to housing association. So at one point, it wasn't like overnight, the pandemic hit and I thought I'm going to buy my house. It was doing a lot of research and, watching a lot of videos. And I typed in, buying council flat and lots of videos were suggested. Yeah. And I always had the feeling when you buy a property, you need a deposit. You need to put a deposit down.
Yeah.
And knowing that, I've kind of struggled with debt for a long time, that I didn't have a deposit,
Yeah.
But I realized due to the length of time I've been in this property, that the discount that I got meant that I actually didn't have to put down a deposit.
Which is amazing. So it was much more straightforward compared to like the traditional way that someone would go about buying a house. Yeah.
Yes.
And I just wanted to ask, what made you want to buy the property you were living in versus looking for a different property? Because you mentioned you were living in a council flat. So that's well, for anyone who doesn't live in England, it's local authority housing or housing that's owned by the government. Yeah. And in England, there is this thing where you can buy your council property. So I want to know what made you buy the property that you were in versus choosing to maybe go and get something else.
Yes, it was definitely the deposit because, I didn't have a deposit to go and buy anywhere else. Mm-hmm. I also started to think more kind of long term that, at some point this property, in the heart of London could become an asset. Because, it doesn't mean I'm going to live here forever. Mm-hmm. And it's 3 bedroom, in the middle of London. So I just thought to myself as well, the fear that I had first about what I'd seen before about a family member losing a property, I thought to myself, since I've been living here, I've never missed a rent payment. Mm-hmm. And I just thought to myself, well, if I've never missed a rent payment, I'm resourceful enough not to miss a mortgage payment as well. Yeah. And knowing that when I look at my parents, for example, they're not property owners. And I've got 2 children myself. They're young adults now. And I just thought, you know what? Let me just take the leap. At least there'll be an asset left for them if anything happens to me. Knock on wood.
Knock on wood, knock on wood. No, absolutely. And that is so good. And for your children, that's obviously going to make a big impact. Home ownership, the equity in the house, it's in the flipping middle of London. That is prime real estate. And it's, when you look at London house prices, it's very, very difficult to buy in London unless you've got money. And for you to essentially buy property in London without a deposit. So I'm interested to know, because you've been paying rent for so long, a deposit wasn't necessary. Do you know how much money in rent you had paid up until that point?
I didn't actually work it out. But I mean, I've been living here since 2004. Mm-hmm. And, the last few years rent was in the region of £700 a month. So like if I backdate that, I haven't got my calculator with me at the moment, but it's quite a lot of money.
Yeah. So 15 years times 700. Oh my God. Let me just do that calculation.
Yeah. Normally I use my phone for the calculation, but obviously I'm using my phone.
You're using it. Okay. All right. Let me just, I don't know, but for those maths geeks out there that are looking and say this is not the correct calculation, who cares? So 15 years. Oh no, actually, what it's 700 times 12, which is 8,400. And then we do 8,400 times 15. 126,000.
Oh my God.
Roughly.
And then bring tears to my eyes because that could have been gone towards the mortgage.
That's a brand new house. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you think about it, there's been occasions where I've bought back and maybe regretted, I should have bought it sooner. But I still believe very much everything happens for a reason. Everything happens at the right time. It's because I've grown more in my financial literacy. That's why I believe I can handle it now. Mm-hmm. If I bought it before, you never know. Maybe the same thing as the family member could have happened.
Exactly. No, absolutely. No, I know exactly what you mean. And, the best time to buy it was yesterday, but you bought it now, and that's all that matters. And like you said, you haven't missed a rent payment, £100,000 plus approximately. So, you can absolutely do it. And I saw also on your Instagram that you're looking to pay off your mortgage early. I'm not a homeowner, so I'm not really knowledgeable in terms of mortgages and equity and all of that stuff. But can you tell me about some of the reasons why you want to pay off your mortgage early?
Well, I believe that, I'm in my 40s, 43 to be exact. And
you don't look it, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel like I've kind of lost a lot of time. I mean, we've just done that rough calculation. And I feel like even if I don't pay it off in full, like early, I feel like I need to play catch up a bit because of all the years that I could have been paying the mortgage. I haven't obviously got as much time as if I bought it when I was in my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of lost 2 decades of paying towards the mortgage, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong, I haven't started making overpayments yet because I'm very much a person that needs to do one thing at a time. So for me, the main thing is like get rid of the debt first, because it could be, at some point, especially with the kids big now, that I think to myself, instead of paying off the mortgage early, maybe I can downsize, my daughter's already left home. At some point, my son will. I don't need a 3-bedroom room. It could be that I partially rent it out, as in the 2 other rooms, or I could go and downsize and maybe let it pay for itself, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it's not, I haven't made a kind of, how can I say, a concrete decision yet as to paying it off early or not. I'm kind of looking at once I've paid my last bit of consumer debt off, I'll kind of look more into it and, just kind of decide, okay, do I want to, pay it off early, or do I want it to pay for itself?
Mm-hmm.
How I'm going to do that. But essentially, I just feel a bit like I need to play catch up because I could have already paid 100 grand off, if you know what I mean.
But like you said, everything happens for a reason. And actually, where we were talking about a lack of role models, as in homeowners in our own sort of childhoods, it's really good that your story is going to reach another person out there, and you're going to be that role model for them and that inspiration for them to say, Tasha can do this by herself with 2 kids, then I can do it as well. So no, that's really good. And you mentioned there about debt, and that's what I want to sort of lead on to now. You have had 2 debt-free journeys. From what I understand, one started at sort of around 2010 and ended in 2015, and another started in 2017 and is still ongoing now. You're almost debt-free. So can you tell me about the first debt-free journey that you went to? That you went through, sort of, how much debt was that in total, and how did you manage to pay it off?
Yes. So it was 30 grand plus. At the time, I wasn't, I feel that now my financial literacy has improved much more. So I didn't at the time know the exact figure. I just knew it was 30-ish thousand something. And it was all unsecured debt, as in, I didn't have like a house.
Was it like loans and credit cards and Yeah,
exactly. So how the debt actually started, it actually, I should say, the debt just never stopped. That's how it got to that point. So as soon as I was 18 and I could sign a dotted line, legally, I ended up taking out my first loan. It was me and one of my school friends. We ended up, she told me about this place where we can borrow money now that we're 18.
As you do.
That was in the Netherlands at the time. And funnily enough, I don't even remember what I borrowed the money for. I keep on meaning to say I need to call that friend, because I still have contact with her, by the way, to see if she still remembers what we borrowed it for. It would have been something stupid as maybe, clothes, holiday, something stupid. And, from the age of 18, it's actually just been ongoing. I'd never actually paid my debt off. So in 2009, I just realized over the years that the debt was making me feel quite down.
Yeah.
Sometimes I would feel quite down and I wouldn't know why. And I figured out, so many years later, that it's actually my financial situation that's making me feel such a burden, like I'm carrying around, a rucksack and it's just so heavy.
It's like a heavy stone. It's just such a weight on your shoulders.
Yeah.
It's like an invisible thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that massive debt, luckily, I ended up speaking to a cousin about it. I've not really been a person that speaks about money, or because I would just feel the same. But this particular cousin I'm really close with, and she says, "Oh, Tash, you seem a bit, off. What's wrong?" And I just said, "Oh, all this debt, and I'll never be able to pay it back." And I was feeling quite negative about it. And she introduced me to a company that did something called an IVA, which stands for Individual Voluntary Arrangement. So it wasn't as if I was getting red letters, creditors chasing me or anything, but I felt like I needed a drastic shock to the system. I needed to be accountable. I needed to answer to someone because obviously I wasn't answering to myself. So I thought, okay, looked into it. I did see that it's quite serious. But I just thought, let all the credit be taken away from me for 5 years. And finally just get rid of that debt. So, I entered into that IVA.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up within 5 years clearing that debt.
Yeah.
I must say that there were some things I hadn't read properly within the terms and conditions.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about how an IVA actually works and some of these terms and conditions that you didn't read through properly?
Yeah. So if you enter an IVA for 5 years, you cannot, obtain any credit whatsoever.
Yeah.
What actually helps with very much is, the IVA company, they actually contact your creditors for you.
Yeah.
And, the payment arrangements are made. So if you're really stressed out, you're getting calls, you're getting red letters, you're getting, maybe letters for bailiffs, which, as I said, I didn't have, but it could have got to that if I kind of left it. So they kind of do that work for you, but you do have to do something as well. You've got to provide your income and expenses. You've got to provide your pay slips. It came to a point where, I had to send bank statements. And if there was anything that wasn't kind of, agreed or anything with the kids had come up, it's like I felt like I had to answer to someone. And even though in a way that was good, the IVA, it didn't actually teach me still how to manage my money or how to change my mindset. It was more, I've got to provide this, I've got to provide that. So they don't actually coach you. Maybe some companies do now, I don't know. But the one I used at the time, it was just, you've got to provide this and, you've got to pay this and then you'll be fine. So it was kind of like, okay, I've just got to transfer that money and, they'll leave me alone kind of thing. It's for 5 years, some people call it blacklisted. There's no such thing really as being blacklisted. It just means no access to credit and it stays on your credit file, not 5 years, but an extra year is added on. So for 6 years, you have no access to consumer, credit, mortgages either or anything. I do think it was good for me, but as I said, I feel like I didn't learn anything. There was no coaching involved. So my money mindset hadn't changed. It was just the fact that, I've just got to struggle for 5 years and I've just got to answer to them. And once the 5 years is up, my debt is gone.
And can I just ask, how much money were you paying towards that IVA?
Well, the problem is for me, it wasn't the same every month. So I forgot to mention, when you're in an IVA, I feel personally it works best when you are on a set salary. Yeah. So the way my salary works is I do have a base salary, but it's also very much target driven, as in you can earn commissions on top as well. And that was the part of the terms and conditions that Natasha hadn't read properly. So I ended up actually paying more, because obviously what I told them that I'm going to earn, I didn't know from month to month if I was going to hit targets and earn more, you know. So I would say, if you're in a job that, you know, your salary can differ because of, you know, bonuses, or sometimes no bonuses, then I would say, you know, think carefully about going into an IVA, because I felt like I was being punished whenever I earned a bit more, you know. So so it was, I mean, I would say, I think it was between £300 to £500, but as I said, it differed a bit, you know, because I just on a monthly basis had to provide, you know, what I got. I had to show the pay slips, and then they would work out and tell me, you know, and that's why I'm saying as well, when I was paying through the IVA, because my money mindset hadn't changed and the financial literacy wasn't there, I didn't necessarily even check exactly how much I was paying back. It was just like, they've told me to pay this. It was just like, they told me to pay this, I sent it, and that's it. You know what I mean?
Oh my God. And I just wanted to ask, knowing what you know now, if you could go back, obviously you would choose a different method to pay off debt, but what method would that be?
I think it would be the method I'm using now. So, you know, I'm not answering to anyone than to myself. As in, you know, making changes. Obviously, I mean, I've been in debt, you know, from the age of 18, really. I've kind of cleared it once through the IVA. And then, you know, not long after, I got back into debt again. So I think, you know, when we go into what I've done to get to the level I am now, you know, it's just because I actually personally had to make changes to the way I handled my finances. And that is what helped me through to where I am now. And before, in the IVA, it was more like, you know, answering to a teacher or to a mentor, you know, a master or something like that, you know. But, you know, the second time round, I've only had to answer to myself, and I've had to be disciplined and focused, you know, because there was no one that was going to do it for me. Only I could do it. Yeah.
So can you tell me about your second debt-free journey? So not long after you paid off the IVA and you were debt-free, well, in 2017, you found yourself in debt again. So how much money were you in debt? And what do you think, and I think you've already touched on this, but what are some of the things that you feel like contributed to you getting into debt again after clearing off 30 grand?
Yeah, I think it was, I mean, it was just over a year that I did remain debt-free. It felt good. It felt very good. But remember, the IVA was for 5 years, and then they add on an extra year, as in your credit's still bad for another year. So, you know, it was quite easy for me to stay debt-free because I couldn't get any credit.
Yeah. And you know what the crazy thing is, just on a little side note, when you're already in that position, like the last thing you should be thinking of is getting credit. But it's crazy how that's the first thing we think of, like, oh my God, how's this going to affect my credit? I'm like, no, you should not even be thinking about getting credit because you can't even afford what you have now.
Yeah, and that's why I said as well, my mindset, my money mindset hadn't changed. It was just, okay, I've done what I need to do. I've answered to these, you know, police, whatever. And now, you know, I'm debt free. So yeah, what had happened actually, I felt like after that, struggling for those 5 years, and it was a struggle, trust me. I just think that, I took the kids on holiday to Canada. I went to see family, and it felt great, you know, not to take out a credit card to pay for that holiday. And when we were there, you know, they wanted certain things that you can't get in the UK. And it was just so nice to be able to pay with my disposable income and not, you know, debt. But yeah, before I knew it, you know, I came back. I was not budgeting. You know, I didn't have any financial goals or anything. You know, so my old habits had kicked in. And, you know, I found myself, you know, wound back up in debt again. I mean, it was gradually because I was being a little bit more careful than, you know, my younger self. But yeah, come May 2020, it was 17,256.34. It's like I can't forget that amount.
You're very specific. So how did you feel about having to start your debt-free journey all over again? Because sort of listening to you speak about how you obviously became debt-free and then how to start again reminds me of like weight loss. Like I know like I lost a ton of weight like about 5 years ago. And then once I reached my goal weight, I piled everything back within like 6 months. And then just the idea of like starting again, I was like, nah, this is long. So how did it feel for you having to completely start again?
I think for me, it was COVID has obviously been a difficult time for a lot of people. You know, people have lost loved ones, people have lost jobs. You know, it's still fairly challenging at the moment. But when kind of the very first lockdown came about and you couldn't actually go anywhere anyway, I think it was because I was kind of in a way forced to not spend on commuting. So no tube fares, as in underground fares. For people in America, maybe subway, fares. So I started to kind of see, I don't need a travel car to get to work. And I started seeing, I'm not going out for meals. I'm not going to birthdays. I'm not going for drinks after work. And I started, kind of, so even though it wasn't that I started straight away as the pandemic hit, but I think the peace and quiet that it brought about, even though it was obviously a horrible situation, it was automatically was saving more because there was nothing to do. And I was working from home, So I think if it wasn't for the pandemic, sometimes I wonder if I would have actually started the second debt-free journey. I do think I would at some point, because obviously I started the first one as well. So I do think at some point I would think, Tash, you need to do something about the finances. But I just feel like, the pandemic was, for me personally, the perfect time to do it.
Wow. And a lot of people made a lot of changes during the pandemic. And, that's really interesting to hear that you started your debt-free journey because of that. So as of right now, how much debt do you have left to pay?
Yeah, so out of the figure I just said, I've got £1,000 left.
Yes. Are we going to be debt-free in 2021? Start 2022 off on a clean slate?
Well, the funny thing is, I've really been sticking to my plan. It's not been easy. It's been blood, sweat and tears, to be honest. But my boiler broke. And
oh, no.
So it's kind of like, I feel like I've been running a marathon and I'm like, I can see the finish line in sight. And that I'm not going to do it by this month, unfortunately. That was, the plan, because I really wanted to start 2022 with no consumer debt at all. It just goes to show how important having an emergency fund is.
Yes, tell me about that. So your boiler broke. Obviously you didn't use any credit to pay that off. So I'm assuming that, was it before you start the debt-free journey, or was it during that you were saving your emergency fund?
Well, what it is, I've had actually a few emergency funds.
Okay.
But, with my daughter going to university and everything, I have actually used those emergency funds to help my daughter. Accommodation costs and things, because a deposit has to be paid up front, and I didn't realize that it's not like she can pay monthly, it has to be quarterly.
Uni costs.
And because she's moved away to another city, she left her job in London and obviously had to find a job in the other city. So until then, obviously I'm her mother, I'm going to help her out, So the emergency fund I had saved, they went towards that. So I didn't, if I had emergency funds, then the boiler wouldn't be such a problem. And, I have actually felt a little bit down about it, because for me, I'm a very kind of principle-based person. I've said that at the end of December, I would do that grant and the debt is gone. And it does look like it's going to spill over into January, February now, just because of the unexpected costs. You know, and you know, that's another thing. You know, being a single parent, sometimes, you know, because you can only depend on yourself, these things will happen. You know?
They will, yeah. And don't be so hard on yourself about it, because you are going to become debt free. And at the end of the day, your boiler broke and you had an emergency fund. Like, can I just ask, like, how many months worth did you have saved up? Obviously, it was enough to pay for a boiler, and I know boilers are like ridiculously expensive to fix, especially when they're broken. Like, how many months worth of emergency fund did you have, and like, how long had it taken you to build up that money?
Yeah, I mean, initially it was just £1,000, and then I added to it, so it was about, you know, 2,500. So definitely not, you know, 3 or 6 months or anything. I kind of started watching Dave Ramsey, you know, during the pandemic, and you know, he says always to get to that first 1,000, and you know, I'd add a little bit more to it, but you know, as I said, I did end up using that, and at the end of the day, you know, I think it's for a good cause. You know, I also wanted to go to university, and you know, I'm not going to let her struggle.
No,
you know, very hardworking. So
yeah,
you know, I've got a job now, so things, you know, are getting a little bit easier. You know, so yeah. But you know, when I kind of you know, kind of come next year, I'm building back that emergency fund up.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And it's sort of, it's very similar to what I did, where I think this time last year I had around probably, I want to say probably just over £1,000 left, but I was so keen to start off 2021 debt free that I ended up using my emergency fund to pay off the rest of the debt, just so that on the 31st I'm
you sound like me. Yeah, you sound like me, because I'm still kind of thinking sometimes, like, look, I know it's Christmas and everything, but just don't do Christmas presents, just don't do this, and just get that grand out of the way, because I'm so kind of set on, like, I've got to do this, because I'm a person of principle, you know. But as you said, you know, I'm generally someone that's quite hard on myself anyway. And I think that, you know, from May 2020 being, you know, 17 grand in debt, and, you know, now £1,000, I think sometimes you've got to just look at it as well and just say, okay, Tash, you know, a couple more months, you know,
it's
might not
not going to make a difference. Yeah. And and God forbid, like another emergency happens and you've already used your emergency fund, you know, that's not necessarily wise. So I think, you know, for this kind of just tells us that sometimes we have to make the more objective decision, not the more like emotional one, which is like, I want to be debt free now. And sort of something you touched on about being a single parent with 2 children. And obviously, you've had your kids all the way throughout your debt-free journeys and your financial journey. So what are some of the challenges that you faced as a single parent in terms of money?
Yeah, I think it's things like they go to school and their friends have certain things and they want those things as well.
Yeah.
And you don't want them to lose out, you know, just because you're a single parent, because you feel like, you know, it's not their fault. You know, the family unit hasn't worked out how, you know, you intended it to. You know, so sometimes, you know, debt would have been accumulated by things like that as well, you know, because, you know, kids can be quite cruel as well. So, you know, if you kind of, I don't want to really say fit in, because I do feel like my children are, you know, they're quite more followers than, leaders than followers, I meant to say. But yeah, they still have, when they're at that age, something like, oh, you know, they've got those trainers, I would like those too. You know, they've got that tracksuit, or you know, they say, oh, my friend had a limousine for her birthday. Oh, I want that, you know, and things like that. So yeah, I think, and I think as well, what's been hard is that you can only depend on yourself. You know, there's, you know, not another, like a partner, or, you know, another person that you can kind of discuss finances with. So the decisions are yours, and sometimes the financial decisions are very emotionally driven. because, you feel maybe guilty towards your children, that, you haven't provided for them what they actually need. So sometimes you kind of buy because you might buy things because you just feel like that will make things better. But obviously materialistic things in the end don't. But that's how you can feel sometimes.
Yeah, and I can't, obviously I don't have kids, but I can imagine, sometimes when I wanted things, how my parents must have felt, if I came home and said, oh, so-and-so got this and so-and-so's got that, I can imagine, that guilt that you have for wanting to provide for your kids. But you know what, you did the best you can. You've gotten them a home now, which they completely theirs. So, all of the sacrifices that you've made so far have definitely been worth it. And, you're looking after your daughter at university, and it's, you're doing your best. And, but I can imagine some of the challenges that single parents do face, it can be completely, it can be very difficult. So what is some advice that you can give to someone who is a single parent about, how they can sort of strike a balance between wanting to do things for their children, but then also making sure that they look after themselves financially?
Yes, no, definitely. I think it all, first of all, starts, with self-care as well. If you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anyone else, And I think having open conversations with your children as well. The example I gave earlier, when I asked Tom, what are you earning, and the look that I got. I think having open conversations with children are very intelligent and they understand more than we think. And I think sometimes if you're struggling, maybe for now, to maybe get something for them, or, something that involves money.
Yeah.
I think if you're open with your children more, they'll actually understand. You can actually, that can create them having maybe a bit more patience and a bit more understanding. But if you just kind of shut that whole financial conversation off, kids can be left to feel sometimes like, oh, mum doesn't want to buy this for me. Oh, maybe she doesn't love me. Oh, what have I done wrong? Oh, and things like that. So I definitely think having open conversations with your children. I didn't initially have that because I wasn't taught to. But, on this second debt-free journey, I've been, open with them about things. Initially, I wasn't. Initially, I actually lied to them about the figure.
Yeah.
But then I thought to myself, no, just tell them exactly what's going on. And I just feel like it's actually inspired them as well. So my advice would definitely be open, about finances and about what's going on. Caring for yourself. If your children your children will be looking up to you, and if they see you're caring for yourself, you'll be in better health, in a better mood. It's all about those things as well.
Yeah, that's good. And that's some really good advice. And I just wanted to ask, lastly, you're going to be debt free very, very soon, at the start of 22. Once you are debt free, obviously being debt free is one of your goals. What are some of your financial goals that you have for once you do become debt free?
Yes. So definitely have 6 months worth of expenses saved in an emergency fund. Jobs are not jobs for life anymore. And even though so far so good, I didn't lose my job during the pandemic. I didn't get salary cuts either. But I think it's just always good to have that there. I mean, what happened with the boiler was a prime example.
Yeah.
You just, So I want to start with 6 months expenses and, hopefully that becomes 12 months. But I like to chop things down in small pieces. So 6 months first, I think that's manageable for me now. Kind of the biggest goal really financially is to finally start investing.
It is a very scary thing for people. And I know when I started investing, I literally started with £10. That was, I was like, £10, £20, just start, just start. And that's such a good goal that you have. And I'm so happy that you want to start investing. I love seeing women invest because, you hardly ever hear it from women. I always hear from like my guy friends who are like, oh, I invest in crypto or I invest in this, but I hardly ever hear my girlfriend say that. So I absolutely love that you, you want to start investing as well. Do you have any other goals?
So to figure out property-wise, am I going to start overpaying or not? Because you can pay up to 10%, overpay up to 10% a year on your mortgage. If you pay more, you can actually be penalised for it. So it's very important to read the terms and conditions, which sometimes can be a pain. So it's kind of going to be, am I going to start overpaying, or depending on what my son decides to do after college, if he's moving out, maybe, get the property to pay for itself, things like that. I think the biggest thing is sticking to budgeting, because that's something that I didn't do in the past. And when I, finished paying the IVA and I quickly got back in debt again, it was obviously because I didn't tell my money where to go. So it kind of lived its own life. So it's important for me, financial goal wise, to continue budgeting in the way that I have, because that's the only way. You need to know where your money's going. Otherwise, it will literally just go.
Your budget is the foundation of everything you do. And I completely agree with that. And, I can completely relate to that, because I know when I first moved to New Zealand, because everything was just a hot mess where I didn't actually have any budget whatsoever. So I kind of just burned through all of my savings. And at the end of it, I was like, oh my God, I did waste a lot of money. Yeah. But thank God I'm now back on track. But no, for anyone listening, your budget is the foundation of everything that you do. And without that, you will find yourself in some places thinking, where did my money go?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I felt like that for a long time. And, it's not just about the action of budgeting. It literally, for me, it's made me feel more calm within myself as well. So it has also a positive effect on your, mental well-being. You just feel more calm and in control. You know what's coming in, you know what's going out, where you might need to cut back. And if you don't want to come back, how maybe you can earn a bit extra on the side, so that's definitely something I'll continue doing, the budgeting, side hustle as well. I do side hustles on and off because my job is quite intense anyway. So, there's times where I side hustle, then I take sometimes little breaks, and then, I kind of go again. And that brings an extra income.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I'm so glad that those are your goals. And, I'm sure if we catch up in a year, they'll be completely different. I'm sure you'll have your emergency fund. You would have started overpaying your mortgage. And, that's what I think is really good about having goals, especially now as we come towards the new year. Anyway, Natasha, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for telling your story. I know that there are people who are going to be hearing this and listening to this, and it's going to have an impact on them. And you're going to be a role model for people in some sort of way. So thank you so much for just coming here and just being your fabulous self.